I wanted something which wouldn't result in a 9 to 5 job. He said, no, I think I want to see what she can do in a court. I'm able to plan my work around my life. And in law firms, it's the other way, right? It's the other way around. You plan your life around your work. It's a catch-22 situation where you'll keep on doing it until you can't, and then somebody else will step in and then they will do it until they can't. I don't think there's a very open, transparent dialogue happening about the toxicity inside law firms. A person who goes home at 7 is much more used to me than a person who goes home at midnight and then comes in exhausted the next morning. Our legal thinkers don't know how to think. And research isn't just, looking at 5 judgments and saying, okay, this is the one I want. Research is about just extensive reading.
A lot of writers are not really thinking.
So I tell all my juniors that at least you should want to be here.
Yeah.
The rest I will teach, and the rest can be learnt. But I cannot teach you attitude, and I cannot teach you how to feel about the law.
Welcome to the Untitled show. Today we have with us Manasi Chatpalliwar, who's a commercial litigation lawyer. She has done her law from Delhi University. She's also pursued her higher education in Singapore, the National University of Singapore. Welcome to the show, Manasi. Very happy to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Lovely. So you decided to pursue law after doing your BA Honours in History from Delhi University.
Yes.
Why did you decide to take that step?
So history was good. I mean, I had arts in school, so I was always geared towards, humanities. But after I finished studying history, I didn't really have a plan of what to do with it, because the only avenues that open up for you after something like that is either journalism, there are courses in mass communication, and law. And I had a discussion with my parents, and my mother said, "Why don't you do an MA in history? Then you do an MPhil in history. Then you do a PhD in history, and then you teach." I said, "Oh my God, I've been in these classes with my batchmates. I like the subject, but I don't know if I can commit myself to making it my entire
Becoming a historian,
making a profession
and then,
out of it, and teaching, of course, and then." And then my father said that, you fight so much with us at home and you argue a lot. So why don't you consider law?
And, that's a good reason.
Yeah. And my best friend was filling out forms for mass communication. So she said that, you should also consider journalism. And I said, I don't really know if I want to just sort of run around people with a mic and ask them to tell me their stories. I'm not that curious. And so I gave all the entrance exams, and it was also that time where you don't have a lot of, at least I speak for myself. We didn't have a lot of guidance in, unlike kids here, like now in today's age, kids in colleges have counselors, they have all these, recruiters coming in, and they've got all these exposure, they've got the internet on their phones, so we didn't have all of that. So I gave all the entrance exams, and then I got a decent rank for Campus Law Center. And, and then I thought about it, and I decided to pursue law because I wanted something which wouldn't result in a 9 to 5 job. And I wanted to be able to use my skills and keep improving. And I had a chat with a few lawyers, and I thought what they did sounded pretty nice. So I ditched the idea of history, which was also not really an idea. And then I ditched even going for... I did get through a lot of mass communication exams also. I just didn't go for the interview. And now I think 12, 13 years later, I think it was a good decision, yeah.
Lovely. So, in law, while pursuing your studies, there is a point of time when you have to choose a stream within law as well, or no?
In my time, so when I was studying law, it was simply BA LLB, which is, you'll have semesters. And each semester will have some of the foundational courses like contract law, tort law, criminal law. And in law college, at least I felt that you're basically just being exposed to the tip of the iceberg. So they're going to sort of teach you everything they can about all the major fields, labor law and constitutional law and jurisprudence, and how judicial thinkers think. But there is no real set path that you can take in law college where you say that I'm going to only study this because that's the kind of lawyer I want to become, or that I want to become an environmental lawyer, I want to become an IP. Personally, in my opinion, that's not something Indian law colleges have in sort of a structure, and it shouldn't be there, because it's the first introduction to law for a student. And it takes a little bit of working in that field and practicing it, or maybe interning with somebody during college for people to get an idea of what sort of law they would want to practice. So I would say in college, we do get a fair idea, but that's also a misconception, because you're actually getting an idea that you like a particular subject because you're good at it, but not necessarily good at practicing it practically. You think I score well in this, so therefore intellectual property is what I want to do, and it's 10 years later, and that hasn't changed. So I get a lot of young lawyers who say, I really enjoyed criminal law as a subject in college, and criminal law is what I want to do. And I've said, you'll have to liaison with the police, you'll have to go to the jail, you'll have to go and meet all these people, and you will have to meet the clients who most likely, and then they look back at me and they say, no, that's not the criminal law I want to practice. So they are thinking about, just going straight to the trial and argument stage, and they're not really looking at criminal law as a kind of field. It requires you to be practically. So yeah, in college, I didn't really have any idea of.
So then later on, how is it that somebody becomes a corporate lawyer, somebody becomes a litigation lawyer, the other becomes a criminal lawyer? When is it that happens, and how much role of chance, or what you land upon, or what are the opportunities that present themselves to you at that point of time in your career play a role, and how much does your own choice play a role in this?
I think that's a good question, because I think, first of all, it obviously has to do with aptitude along with interest. It can't just be that you're interested in doing something, and sometimes you'll not have the aptitude for it. And you may feel that it's better for your mental and professional health, to sort of drop the interest to pursue something that you have the aptitude for. But I think chance plays only a little bit of a role, in terms of, because you will actively pursue the kind of organization or the law firm or the lawyer who is practicing the kind of law that you have an interest in, and how it crystallizes into the stream that you pick in is after working in that stream. I'm somebody who never thought, I didn't actually like arbitration as a subject in college. I never thought I would become somebody who is interested in arbitration. And then it's just because, you keep getting exposed to that kind of work and you start to enjoy it. And then you think, okay, this is something I can do. Whereas I have also worked on, environmental litigation and environmental law related litigation and intellectual property rights related litigation. And I've done it, and, all lawyers, most of us with a particular years of experience behind us, we can all execute this kind of work. But the issue is not whether you can execute it or whether you can do it, but whether you actually like. And when you sort of push yourself into one direction, then automatically that sort of work keeps becoming your bread and butter. So it's a bit of chance and, again, your choice, where after some time you'll find that you have streamlined yourself away from a particular field. Like, for example, when I interviewed for my first job, they offered me corporate law, and they said, we'll put you in the corporate team. And my first mentor, Mr. Rupinder Singh Suri, and he's no more, so he rest in peace, he said, no, I think I want to see what she can do in a court. And he said, come and be my junior, and that's the chance. So that's where the corporate partner said, all right, and then and that's where I think, destiny or whatever. And I went the litigation route simply because the two people I was interviewing with decided that I was fit for both, but then one of them said, I'll take her. And now I don't know. Maybe if two roads diverged in a wood and I would have taken the other, I could have been a corporate lawyer, but we would never know that today.
Yeah. So, in litigation, how frequently do you have to go to the court for a trial?
Okay, so...
Do you have to?
No, so I'll sort of change the question a little bit. You don't go to court every time for a trial.
Yeah.
Court work is daily, so there is procedural court work. And then there is, of course, the process of getting the case from its nascent stage of admission notice, which is essentially when the court thinks that you have some sort of merit, and then they'll tell the other side to come and tell their story.
Right.
And then there's a lot of the filing and documentation in between. So you'll go to court every time your case is listed for a particular purpose, and not just for trial. So trial actually is also not one
Yeah,
incident,
there are many
right?
hearings
Yes,
then,
yes,
yeah.
yes. So you'll go to court every time there's a hearing. You'll go to court every time there is an update that you have to give to the judge. So people who are in the practice of litigation will go to court every day. For litigation lawyers, a lot of the drafting and other work starts after 4, because that's when courts rise, and that's when you get back to your office, and then your actual drudgery in front of a laptop begins. Yeah.
Right.
So I think as a litigation lawyer, you'd go very, very frequently. But lawyers who are in the corporate side of it would not would not appear
Right.
in court.
After having worked for multiple law firms before starting your own venture, like when and why did you decide to take the leap of faith?
Okay, so I have to clarify something here. My partner and my husband, and we are also work partners.
Yeah.
So this firm is something he set up in 2016.
Okay.
And back when we knew each other, then we were just friends, and he said, you should join me. And I said, I was a 2012 graduate, and I was 4 years in the profession, and I didn't have a very high opinion of my legal skills at that time. And I thought, if I go independent now, then I'm robbing my future self of the exposure that I'm trying to get from many of the mentors and seniors that I was working with at that time. So I said no, and then he went and set it up. So he's always been the founding partner. And why I joined it was, I think I was always considering going independent at some point, but I wasn't able to take that plunge. And I was working for a law firm in Gurgaon, and that's when I found out that I was expecting, and that sort of changed everything, because it really put life in perspective, and there was of course, the organization I worked for was very supportive, and they were very nice people. And, we were trying to find a balance of how I would rejoin work and but I was very, 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 very stressed and very hormonal and all of that comes.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I think you just need to take a break and figure out what to do after you have the child. So I had a baby boy, and after that, I just... I couldn't, I couldn't go back to law firm life, because it sort of impinged so much on the personal time and free time that I wanted. So I decided to sort of then try to have an independent practice and set out, so that it would free me up for spending time at home, catering to his needs. He's also, he's still very young. He's only 16 months. So I think it's worked out very well. I'm able to give him time. I'm able to plan my work around my life. And in law firms, it's the other way around. It's the other way around. You plan your life around your work.
Correct. So many of my friends who are pursuing law, or are working with law firms, some colleagues, some people who have met, all of them, they tell me that life is way too hectic. You can't even compare it with the 9-to-5 job.
Yes.
Or the job that we at corporate term as hectic. It comes nowhere close to life at a law firm.
That is correct.
What I am told. So
It is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So do you think there's something that can be done differently here? Why is it that there's a lot of churning also that happens because of this reason. A lot of people do leave the career also as a whole. I've seen people changing their profession in its entirety because they get sort of sapped and burnt out. So is it needed, that sort of does the profession demand that much? Or is it created?
It's a really, really good question. It went close to my heart. So I think to answer in the affirmative, I think we need like serious intervention in the way law firm culture is evolving, and it's not really evolving into something more positive. It's just evolving. It seems to be like a cyclical process where people are just getting different skills, technologies coming in, but the culture of stress inside law firms remains the same.
And some people have almost started taking pride in the
Yes.
in the number of hours that they're spending.
That is problematic. I feel that change sort of has to percolate from above, and like you said, if seniors and people who have more experience are going to, if they demonstrate or they create a culture team wise that look, it's all right to take a step back, it's all right to take a personal day, then perhaps the culture of this hectic environment could change. It cannot come from below. It is just not that kind of environment where if you retaliate or rebel, then you're so junior in the profession that there are 10 people waiting to line up and take your job. So it's a catch-22 situation where you'll keep on doing it until you can't, and then somebody else will step in, and then they will do it until they can't, and then somebody else will step in. But here the change has to happen from here. Maybe, you could have like a in-house counselor appointed. Maybe you could have personal days. I know some law firms have started giving menstrual leaves, which is great.
Wow.
But again, these are these are not
Exceptions.
Yeah, these are exceptions, and also there is no legislation or any sort of guidelines that governs the work-life balance of advocates. We'll fight to the tooth and nail for the relief that you want in court, but there's nobody really fighting for our rights. We're not even covered with labor laws.
What?
We're not governed, like the labor laws don't govern us. So I mean, we're sort of in this limbo of a dark space where until we sort of figure out how to work effectively but without
There's
all
no
the drama.
lobby which is trying to sort of at least bring lawyers under some sort of umbrella or safety net.
There are people obviously who advocate for health insurance and rights such as that, and of course there are all these bar associations who do work. I mean, there are people doing wonderful work, but I'm just saying that in terms of controlling the environment inside an individual organization, it's just not, first of all, possible with law firms because it's unregulated. No, this sector. It's like, for example, if you have a company. Then you have laws about prevention of sexual harassment and you have to implement that. Then you have laws about, you have an employee code of conduct, and then you have service rules and, what governs a promotion and a demotion and all of that.
Right.
We don't have that sort of a practice in law firms, at least in the ones that I have worked in.
Yeah.
I have not seen that. And even law firms which have posh policies have not implemented them. So you do have cases of junior associates bringing up something against a more senior male figure, and then after 2 months that person has left the firm, the junior, right? And so that's what I'm saying. It's cyclical. That sort of. I don't think there's a very open, transparent dialogue happening about the toxicity inside law firms. But I think a lot of my peers would agree that many of them have gone into independent practice because of this particular reason. That even though the money is great and the exposure to big clients is there, and that's very good. But after a while, it takes a huge toll on you, because apart from practicing the law, you are focusing so much on the personal demons that others have carried into the workplace, and then you're sort of, trying to keep your head above water. But already you're also part of such a difficult field which requires extensive reading and extensive attention. So you just get very stressed. It's like you're in an exam hall all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah. So.
And so again, there's one more profession, which is that of a doctor, where doctors sometimes the working schedules are very hectic. Not everywhere, but a lot of times doctors go through night shifts and they have to, constantly keep working, monitoring other people's health while their own is sort of at stake. So many patients being lined up, especially, at a lot of hospitals, and where they have to, somebody who's doing their MD, they have to do their studies, then they have to also cater to patients and all of that. So that is a line or a profession which, if there are few doctors and there are more patients, the doctor, there's this urgency in the profession itself.
Right.
It is ingrained in the profession. Is it true for law firms also, is what I'm thinking? Because there I can understand if why a doctor is, having sleepless nights, or having to, or is sort of exhausted. But at a place like a law firm, where it's corporate law, where it's maybe litigation or maybe something else, criminal law, maybe it's a little more stressful. But is there any sort of urgency in the profession itself that needs people to be on their toes throughout?
So, of course, I mean, there is an urgency related to the work that we do, right? There are deadlines that are set by statutes. It's called limitation. There are deadlines set by clients. For example, if you're a corporate lawyer and there's a deal that's going through, maybe something needs to be executed yesterday. Maybe there's something which needs to reach somebody tomorrow. So, of course, you will always have one or two lawyers working around the clock because of the deadlines that have been imposed. And as long as there is something which is coming from, for example, a court compliance, an order might say that you have to do something in XYZ weeks, right? If you don't, then you are basically showing a sorry face to the client, saying, we knew about this, we didn't do this. Now we have to file an application to make the delay go away. So, of course, that there is a time for doing things, and there are sometimes very, very quick and strict deadlines. Or, for example, a client will come to you and say that this appeal is going to be, I'm sorry I didn't come to you earlier, I had gone to 10 other lawyers. Now I have 2 days to file. Then you're the lawyer who wants that work, but then you're also like, you're an idiot if you've been roaming around for 10 other lawyers, and then in 2 days you've committed, so that's your deadline, right? That's a self-imposed deadline. But there are many situations where it does become hectic. But I would say that, coming back to our earlier discussion about how it gets very, very fast-paced all of a sudden, it's the unnecessary, sort of creation of false
urgencies also, which happen in
which happens
as well.
which is what results in people burning out. I mean, see, if there is 3 weeks to do something, there is no reason to make a 27-year-old sit at the desk that same day and say, I want it by 6 a.m. in the morning.
Yes.
Because what you've none got is an exhausted resource who's no good to you the next day. And he's got that thing in the back of his head that, this is due 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
Even the court doesn't want to see it now, I mean, at this moment. But you got this thing in your head that now I've gotten that, now everything else that is on my desk has sort of piled over to the next day. So I think there is a need to address this culture of creation of false urgency. I have worked
Whatever is urgent is urgent,
Yes.
but at least let's
Yes.
not add more to it unnecessarily.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, it will also sort of help people think better about the situation they're in, I personally feel. It works very well with my team. I tell them that if nobody's dying and nobody's property is getting attached and nobody's bail is getting cancelled and nobody is getting hung by the neck and tomorrow nothing major is happening, then please try to go home by 7. And it works very well for their emotional, they know they have that bandwidth after 7 o'clock to do whatever else they were doing. Instead of me telling them, listen, please sit till midnight because it's really nice and, we are a small office and we need to show that we are so productive and you please keep drafting and typing. And a person who goes home at 7 is much more used to me than a person who goes home at midnight and then comes in exhausted the next morning and
Correct.
hasn't got much to show for it.
Right.
So that's something I've taken away from the law firms I've worked and I've decided not to do it in my own office.
Great. Good to hear that. Here's
Hoping
a
to.
start. Here's a beginning. All right. So you pursued your LLB here at Delhi University, and then you went on to do your masters in Singapore.
Yes.
What difference did you see in the education style in India versus Singapore?
A lot. Indian education is very focused on theoretical knowledge, and now not so much on rote learning, I would say. I mean, that's probably our generation and all, but it's still focused a lot on what is written inside books, and especially those books that have been, prescribed as a curriculum. And at a master's level in Singapore, while of course the course is very heavy on reading, but the education system there is more geared towards practical and analytical, encouraging analytical and critical analysis and thinking. And yes, I mean, reading material is relevant, but it's not really the center of what you're being taught. Which I think is a huge difference in India. I mean, in Indian law schools, you'll have a lot of case laws and a lot of reading and a lot of theory, but you have a very small amount of time that is being spent on law students in teaching them on how to implement the theory that they have learned into a practical situation. I mean, we have moot courts, which are at college level, but you'll see these moot courts have a couple of professors who are the mentors, and then the kids are just basically organizing it themselves, doing it themselves, but you don't have it as a part of a classwork where you have some sort of practical 80 minutes every day in a law college set aside for a professor to sort of come and work with you on what you're learning. I think it should be a completely different course, practical implementation or whatever it can be called. But I think that's missing. And I think in Singapore, what I noticed was that every class and every subject that you pick up was a lot about personal interaction with the teacher. It was a lot about teamwork and assignments and, in-class work to sort of expand on your practical abilities to use that knowledge in the legal world, which is one of the major differences. I think in the second, I would say yes, the expectation to have the ability to think critically about a written piece of work, whether it's an article or whether it's a case law. I think Indian law schools are still a little behind in that. Our legal thinkers don't know how to think. We know how to read and analyze, and we know how to say that this is a Supreme Court judgment and this is a judicial precedent, and therefore it overrules this judicial precedent. But we don't really know how to look at what is written critically and whether to say that whether the Supreme Court was right or wrong, or whether the High Court was right or wrong. We leave that to the existing judges. We sort of watch the volley between the judges, and then we see, okay, no, this
It's
judgment of
difficult to form your own opinion.
Yes. We don't, lawyers, a lot of us don't know how to look at a judgment or a document and then think this could have been done differently.
Yeah.
And of course, there are many stellar minds in the profession that are doing it brilliantly, and those are some of the designated senior advocates, and of course, non-designated also. But I think as a general rule, our law students and young lawyers don't have that skill. Yeah.
And that is one skill that you'd like to be inculcated in.
I think it's an important skill, right?
Yeah.
It's almost like if you're in a profession where where you are practicing, and the Constitution of India is one of the basic tenets of, it's like the mother book that you will go to Supreme Court for one day on matters of that are contained therein. Then I think it's really important to have a sort of ability to think beyond what is written. And to think it on your own, not with comparing it to one Google article and then comparing the other. So a lot of now there is no legal reasoning happening. A lot of times people are just comparing what somebody else has come up with in a judgment and then sort of just putting it out there. I think that's a really important skill that lawyers need to have.
Do you think that this has sort of deteriorated over time with Google?
Yes.
Because earlier people had to go through a lot of this library of case studies and what has happened in the past and do their own research and figure out. And right now there's just the information is so easily available. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it like
I mean, it's both. The thing is, but it's mostly bad. It's good because now for lawyers like me who are hard pressed for time, I mean, everything is available on your phone, right? It's bad because you're also getting inundated with insane amounts of information, which is not physically possible to process. And it's terrible for the generation that comes after us because they've got this shortcut and they're not putting in that work. So, I mean, it's really easy to Google, give me a judgment on whatever, XYZ topic, right? Which means that they're not picking up that really important skill of research. And research isn't just, looking at five judgments and saying, okay, this is the one I want. Research is about just extensive reading. And what that does for you when you're pulling out case after case and then discarding it because it's not applicable, your brain is learning how to think on what you're looking for, which is eventually what, you need to, all skills need to be practiced. But now they've got this, they've got Gemini and they've got Chat GPT and they've got Meta. So this is a dwindling skill, and the fact that it's dwindling is really, really problematic, because now I think we'll also have cases where people will have, drafted submissions and submitted them with sort of precedent that doesn't exist because some AI came up with it.
Yeah. So that's something that we are facing right now also as a, content marketing firm, where one of the areas of content creation is, of course, content writing. And we saw that while writing in itself is something that AI can do, and which is why a lot of people started relying on AI for that. Some writers and a lot of writers are not really thinking, and then we realized that 80% of the work that a writer is supposed to do is think. Right. 20% of it is writing. Writing is just expression of your thought. But if you've completely stopped thinking and outsourced thinking to AI, then you are just a mediator in between.
Correct. And also you can't outsource thinking to AI, right? I mean, that's just counterintuitive, right? Because they don't have emotional intelligence. So this decision making and emotional intelligence aspect has to be retained, and hopefully people will realize that, because AI is simply going to, it's quick at processing large amounts of data. So when you're hard pressed for time, you can use AI for something like that. I'm feeding you this 100-page document and give me a summary. That's what AI is for at the moment. But when you say draft a 100-page document, AI is going to give you rubbish, because it doesn't have that emotional intelligence and that analytical thinking that you bring to the table as a human. So,
and yours should definitely be better than that of an AI.
Of course, always. It's not dispensable. At least in this profession, till now, I don't feel it is dispensable. Right. I think others who have drafted using AI and submitted in court might disagree.
My goodness. Can you talk about a case which you maybe fought and you found it to be a little funny or weird, or something that you remember that you could just talk about?
Funny and weird. Okay.
Not necessarily funny or weird, maybe just memorable.
I actually, very, very long ago, I was very young. I was just 2 years in the profession, and somebody came to me with a family dispute. And I don't practice family law at all. I have made a conscious decision not to do it, because it makes me very uncomfortable to be part of the dirty laundry being washed in public. And I find it very time consuming, because family law litigants who are looking for divorce or any sort of matrimonial relief, I find that they want their lawyer to be like a therapist. So they'll call you and they want to be assured, and they want their feelings sort of talked about, and it's very time consuming. But when I was a very young lawyer, I didn't know all of this, and I was very new and naive, and I was very green. And then this case came to me about a couple who was getting divorced. And the wife was resisting the divorce and had filed a lot of petitions about maintenance and domestic violence and all of that in particular court. So we needed to defend them, and of course we needed to also make the divorce happen. And what struck me about that case was a couple of things. One was that the wife was accused of having an affair with 7 people. And there is no judgment here. But I remember saying to myself that, I'm only 25 and I don't have time to even eat and sleep. And how has this person got a job and, she's able to do this? She just screwed up her marriage. And the second thing was that when we were in court, the funny thing that happened was that she basically started shouting at me in court. I was for the husband. And she started shouting at me in court. And then she said that you are the person who has made this family follow me around, and they are stalking me at your instructions and etc. And I remember I was being I was a very young lawyer, and I got so perturbed at that, that the way that this person was shouting at me in court. And And I remember telling the judge that, can you please adjourn the matter so she can calm down?
Yeah.
And the funny incident was then after that she threw something at me
Oh my
in the court.
God.
And the matter was adjourned for bad behavior on part of one of the litigants. But I was very decided after that I don't want to do family law at all.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting case from the perspective of not really understanding, because that the person that you were representing was much older. The couple was much older to me in
Yeah.
age,
Yeah.
and they had this crazy marital discord with 7 other people, accusations flying right, left, and center, and me at that time very emotionally fragile
Yes.
young lawyer who wasn't really understanding what. So I think one should also take up these cases when one is a
When
little
it's
bit
a
more
little
mature.
older and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And also you expect some kind of emotional maturity from your clients, which if it is not there, then
You know,
these are
I-
situations that are emotionally charged though.
That's true, and I think that one cannot expect anything like that from clients in such a situation, because everybody's built differently, and I think to expect a person who's going through a divorce or any sort of separation, life is changing,
Yeah.
and for the worse in
Yeah.
some cases. So, and their lawyers are the last thing on their mind. So.
Right. Right.
I don't think that
Right.
they're going to prioritize how they behave around us, but it does leave you with a bad taste in your mouth. And
Yeah.
so the reason that I just can't.
But even with commercial litigation, are there not times when your clients are emotionally charged and
Always,
Always.
always, they will want, then order
there's
will
any
come out.
dispute, that means there is emotional charging that's there.
Depends on what kind of a client it is, because if it's a company, I mean, a lot of times they will not take the dispute personally.
Yeah,
I mean, of course,
right,
but
right.
if it's an individual litigator, X versus Y, or, it's a family dispute, or it's a partition of a family property, of course, the parties are supercharged. First of all, they're family members. Second, there is wealth involved in terms of property and assets. And then third, it looks like one of them is not going to get it.
Yeah.
So, greed can be a really driving force. But in terms of companies, yes, when a lot of things are at stake, when something big is at stake, then you see a lot of emotionally charged people in the company as well. Like, you will get an order will come out, they'll want to get on a call right away. I have worked in cases in COVID where our team sat down to work at 10:30 in the night because of an urgent phone call from the client to our managing partner. And all of us got up the next morning at 12, next afternoon at 12. So we worked through the night to file something immediately, urgently. And I think that was a very long day, but it was COVID, so you're nowhere to be.
Yeah.
So I think all of us didn't protest as much as we should have.
No, sometimes it does make sense, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. In COVID, I think it was this went a little far in COVID because people knew you had nowhere to be. So, usually in India, everybody tells a little white lie. You want a chutti, so you say somebody's, my family's getting married, can I go? And then in COVID, all your bosses knew that you can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
The country's under lockdown. So then work
Just
was
expected
flowing.
to
Yes, you
work.
were just expected to work. There were no boundaries. There was no boundaries for dinner time, bedtime. No such thing existed because people had nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So you either worked or you worried.
Right. So when you build your team at Utkarsh Associates, when you hire people, or when you think of whether someone is a good asset to have or not, what are some of the skills that you look for?
Very underrated skill, reading. I'm not looking for Einstein. I'm not looking for somebody who's very smart, but I am looking, when I build a team, my team members, I'm looking for somebody who has aptitude and the willingness to learn. I'll always want to know what their attitude is like. Are they the kind of person who's going to keep trying? Because that's a really big plus. If you give them some feedback, are they going to try again? And their ability to sort of understand what they're reading. It's my job, if they're very young in the profession, to teach them and to mentor them and to bring them up to speed with the kind of work that I like being done. But I don't need them to be a class topper, and I don't want them to be, a merit holder or whatever. I'm just looking for somebody with basic brains to read, understand, put in the effort, have the attitude that, okay, if I don't get it done today, okay, I will try again tomorrow, and to just sort of be really interested in the law. I'm seeing a lot of graduates of law schools, who have gone to law school, have graduated from law school, and when you ask them in the interview, why do you want to be a lawyer, they have no answer. And that's a little worrying because we're a very small boutique firm. So we have a very small team of about 4 or 5 people. And if one of them gets out of sync and one of them is not performing, it impacts everybody else because they're all sort of picking up a lot of work together. So in my experience, my team, I'd rather keep it small, but I'd rather have people in it who are just interested in becoming lawyers. And it's a journey, so we'll see how it takes them. And I've also had 12 years, so I tell all my juniors that at least you should want to be here. The rest I will teach, and the rest can be learnt, but I cannot teach you attitude, and I cannot teach you how to feel about the law. So that is something you have to be very, very certain about.
When the whole Ambani dispute happened in 2002, that was because Dhirubhai Ambani died without writing a will. And there was a lot at stake. So many assets, so many companies between two brothers. So in those kind of cases, have you sort of started advising your clients or people you know? Do you tell them the importance of a will? And have you also faced sort of have you come across such cases where because of absence of will there was a dispute that happened?
Yes, but there's another sort of veil to this, which is it's not just that disputes will happen because somebody dies intestate or without a will. They'll happen because miraculously in such cases there always exists another will, or a will that is there with another child, which is a forged document. This is a very common part of the litigation that I have seen in terms of wills and people dying intestate, at least in the cases that I have had. It's not a question of somebody will say that this person died without a will, and then the other child will come up and say, no, when that person was living with me, they gave me this. I have a will.
Oh my God.
And a lot of the litigation then becomes about whether the will is registered, whether it is an actual document, whether it is a forgery, and then it'll open up into multiple channels of criminal litigation and civil litigation. Criminal to do with the fact that there's been a forgery and this is a crime, and then civil litigation in deciding whose rights it is and who has rights and whether the rights can be determined on the basis of that document. Then somebody trying to get that document set aside. But in my advice to clients, and we do work with a lot of clients who have extensive property, and every time I tell them, I say that get a will, make sure that your children know it exists, and get it registered, please, because an unregistered will is just a problem, and it's not admissible in terms of evidence. So
how do you investigate when there is a doubt that there might be a forged will? How does that investigation go on?
One of the first things you do is you get it sent to forensics, right? You get it sent to like a forensic FSL. So you will get an original signature from some document belonging to the deceased, for example, from their passbook, from the bank account statement, or whatever. The family has those. And then you basically make a case on how that signature doesn't match the signature on the will that is being claimed as the will that he left behind. And then you will have a first rounder litigation on the validity of that document, on the challenge to that document, etc., etc. So that would be one of the first steps that you would do. You would try to, of course, prove it if it is your case. But if you're opposing it, this is the first thing you'd have to do is get it sent for signature verification by forensics.
Oh, interesting. All right, so any commercial litigation case that was interesting or memorable for you that you can remember and you can speak about it on record? Of course, anonymously.
Most of them have been interesting, I think, because I sometimes look back to see how when I was a very young lawyer and how I handled a case or how I prepared for one as opposed to now, and I'm a little bit more experienced now. There was one case recently where I will not go too much into the facts, but
in brief.
We had a client, and they had a big contract with the government, and it was terminated. And consequences were flowing from that termination, and we needed some sort of relief because the termination was going to impact other work that they were doing across the country, in the sense that it would have been treated as sort of a black stamp, or a sort of an impact on how their performance or their ability to perform.
How their reputation.
Yes,
Okay.
it was impacting
so
their
this
reputation.
client had a contract with the government. The government wanted to terminate.
No, they terminated it.
The government had already terminated
Yes.
this contract, and because this contract was being terminated, it could have affected the reputation of this client when it comes to other projects
Yes.
that they are doing across the
Yes.
country.
It's essentially like if you are fired from one job and then another
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
then another company will say, why were you fired? So
Right.
it's easier to say I resigned than to say fired, right? The fact that you've been fired will put a thought in the employer's head that this person is probably not a good
Capable
performer.
enough, yeah.
Which is the same for these kind of contracts. So we had that, and it was a very stressful situation, and we were trying to figure out relief under various laws because there was an arbitration agreement. And I think this was an interesting and a happy case because I feel very vindicated because we had sought advice from very, very great minds, and we weren't getting the relief. And ultimately, the client said that, we can't keep funneling money into this because it's clear that the relief is not coming from the court. So why don't you just take a shot at one of the hearings and we'll see, because we can't keep paying, because obviously designated seniors, and rightly so, have a very, very large amount of fees to justify their time. And we were at a wit's end, and the client was just, he said, you know what, I give up, and why don't you try? And that was the day that I went to court, and I was sweating buckets, and I thought, oh my God, this is really relief that they want. And I was, it's one of those days when then things keep happening. So the matter didn't reach, then lunch happened, then it wouldn't come. And then by this time, I'm a puddle. And it came at 4:30, and we were so grateful. The judge heard us out. And I think by that time, I was just running on adrenaline. I had no lunch, no coffee, nothing.
Yeah.
And we got the relief.
Wow.
And the client had thankfully logged in.
Amazing.
So they were thrilled. So yeah, I think that was recently it was in September. And very, very, very nice experience. Which also goes
Great.
to show how the legal profession is changing.
Yes.
Judges are more inclined to listen to younger lawyers, or lawyers that may
Or
not.
not just the the
Who
most popular of
Yes,
all.
to faces that are not particularly known. I mean, because I was in law firms for a long time, and because our clients were large clients or clients with big stake, we wouldn't really go to court that often to represent them. We would brief designated seniors, and then those seniors would appear for us.
Right.
So, in terms of court appearances, I'm very recent to this. I'm still finding my footing, as an independent litigator, which has its own challenges, but it's going okay, I guess.
Amazing. Great. Thank you so much, Manasi, for
Thank
your
you.
time. Thanks a lot. Is there like a motto or a one-liner that you really like and live by?
Wow. One liner that I live by. Life is mostly froth and bubble. Two things stand like stone: kindness in another's trouble and courage in your own.
Wow. Amazing. Great. Thank you. It was great speaking
Thank
to you,
you.
Manasi. Thank you
Same.
for taking out the time.
Thank you for having me.